Sequences are really the foundation of everything that you do in Premiere. As I mentioned before, sequences are basically kind of like little mini projects, kind of like little compilations. That's where we put all of our footage and our graphics and our images. That's where we do our work. Now, I showed you in the last movie how to create a sequence when you're creating a new project, but I want to show you here, if you're not creating a new project, how do you create a new sequence? You'll notice that I've imported a video clip here. And if I drag and drop it to the timeline, there's a little no sign by the hand, meaning that there's nothing I could do there because there are no sequences in my project. So I basically have no forum in which to work with this clip. So the way I'm going to create a sequence is by going to the bottom of the project panel here, and I'm going to go to the new icon. It looks kind of like a piece of paper with the edge turning up. That's the Adobe Universal icon for making something new. And before I do that, notice that when I have a clip selected in the project panel, I get kind of like a little status update about its information, its basic facts. So it's 1280 pixels by 720 pixels, so we would refer to that as 720p. It's got square pixel aspect ratios. This is the frame rate, and this is the duration, 19 seconds in one frame. And that's going to help as we make our sequence. I'm going to go ahead and click this new icon. You can see that we have a list of new things that we can make, but right at the top of the list is sequence. Go ahead and click that to get the new sequence dialog box here. Now we have a series of presets on the left-hand side that we can use. And basically what you want to do is you want to select a preset that matches your footage. It doesn't matter what you're outputting to. We might take this HD video and spit it out to a very small video on the web or maybe for an iPhone or something. But still, nonetheless, we want our sequence to match this, to be 1280 by 720 that we'll talk about a little bit later on in this training series. Now, the presets here are actually really helpful, and they're available for all different kinds of formats, even the new DSLR trend that's catching on. There's like 1080p for that, so if you have a Canon 5D Mark II, like I have a Canon 7D, these presets would work great for that. There's also RED camera presets, mobile devices presets, all kinds of great presets that you can use, and when you click one of these presets, you get information about the sequence settings right here on the right-hand side. So it's actually a little bit more complex. And let's say, for example, we're in the standard definition DVNTSC. If we have standard definition 48 kilohertz, that refers to the audio. Basically, there's a lot more to that preset than just those facts. And so we can see that here on the right-hand side with that select on the left-hand side. We could also go over to the General tab at the top, and we can go into the editing mode drop-down, and we can change our editing mode. If we go to the top where it says desktop, I don't know why this is so counterintuitive to me, but this is the way it goes. If you select desktop, then you could manually enter in your settings. You see, with all these other presets, the settings are pretty much determined for you. These are different formats, they're different specific settings, and desktop is the only one that allows you to kind of play with this. So I can manually type in the frame size, 1280, go across over here to 720. The pixel aspect ratio is this thing in parentheses. You can see it's 1.0. That means square. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in this training series. So I'm just going to choose square pixels, 1.0 in parentheses. And for fields, I'm going to take this drop down to no fields. It's progressive scan, so it's not interlaced footage. And the audio works great. It's fine for us. That's a typical sample rate, 48 kilohertz. But we don't really need to worry about that right now because you can see our clip in the project panel here doesn't have any audio, a little speaker icon next to it, so it's just video only. Our time base here is 29.97 frames per second, just as it is in our clip in the project panel. And then we could go over here to tracks, and this is where we would adjust the number of video and audio tracks. We could always add and delete these later, but if you know what your settings are ahead of time, it's really good to input these here. So I've set up my sequence settings in the General tab, got what I wanted. You don't have to use a preset if you're going to use the General tab and make your own, but I'm going to name this Snowboard and go ahead and click OK to create our sequence. Now, as you can see, it automatically created a sequence for us and opened it up, but we could close this if we wanted to. And if you're ever not finding your sequence, you could simply come over here into the project panel, and you can see that this is the icon for a sequence. So you can just double click it here in the project panel to open it up again. And now I am free to drag and drop my footage as I please. And as you can see, it all works together because our sequence and our clips are the same settings. Now, we could, if we wanted to, bring in mismatched footage, and that's not going to cause any kind of problem. If I want to bring in a smaller clip or a graphic that's too big or too small, that's totally fine. You can mix and match different dimensions and different settings in the same sequence if you want to, but it's a good idea to have your sequence match like the main footage that you're going to be using for that sequence. Now, you can have as many sequences in the same project as you'd like, as we'll talk about a little bit later on in this training series. And again, just as a little teaser for that, you could actually create other sequences. Let's say I create a sequence with like an animated graphic sequence. I could actually take that sequence and nest it or put it inside of this sequence as a clip in this sequence. And again, later on in this training series, we'll talk about how to do that. But sequences, again, are really the building blocks in Premiere. You can't work without it, and that's where most of the work goes down.